content presented is for entertainment purposes only. Some content may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. So Facebook has been in the news a lot lately, and I've been able to read a few articles about it, which I find very interesting. Now, before Facebook, there was another social media. It wasn't really an app. It was it was an application, but not for your phone. You could actually only access it from a computer. It's called MySpace, and if you were friends with Tom on MySpace, you were considered cool. But anywho, so apparently there's a whistleblower that not too long ago came out with some pretty interesting stuff. So I'm going to share a little bit of that information with you all today and kind of give you my thoughts on it. I did go ahead and put the links to those documents in the description below. So if you ever want to check those out and listen afterwards, it's perfectly cool. So let's do some quotes. Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen testified Monday before members of the British Parliament, answering questions about the trove of tens of thousands of documents she says show how the company has tracked real-world damage it helped exacerbate. No, it's not what you dirty-minded people think. The Facebook Papers, a collection of internal documents, has triggered a fresh round of global reporting on the social media giant, including an investigation by the Washington Post. Lawmakers had already launched probes into Facebook's conduct following a series of stories by the Wall Street Journal. Facebook has denied many of these allegations. They say, "We have no commercial or moral incentive to do anything other than give the maximum number of people as much of a positive experience as possible." Excuse me. Said a Facebook spokesperson, Danny Lever. "Like every platform, we are consistently making difficult decisions between free expression and harmful speech, security and other issues, and we don't make these decisions inside a vacuum." So what they're trying to say is, don't be a Hoover. We're retooling our teams to make serving young adults their North Star, rather than optimizing for the large number of older people, he said. This is going to be a major shift for Facebook, but one that is already underway behind the scenes for years. Facebook has been aware that it's losing its younger audience to services like TikTok, which Zuckerberg called one of the most effective competitors we have ever faced. He said that now Facebook's teams would be given specific goals to increase the number of people and the engagement from people ages 18 to 29 on the service. He said that would mean trade-offs for older users who are some of the most active users today on Facebook's main services. So what they're saying is that us millennials are the most active on Facebook, which makes sense because we were really super excited about MySpace, and then of course we all merged over to Facebook once we realized how cool it was at the time. The report follows the releases of a trove of internal Facebook documents disclosed to the Securities and Exchange Commission by a whistleblower, revealed that the social media giant has privately and meticulously tracked real-world harm exacerbated by the platform. The reason I put this in here is because by its platforms and ignored warnings from its employees about the risks of their design decisions, which I find very, very interesting. So I think that Zuckerberg and others are doing their best to mitigate as much of the damage that the whistleblower Frances Haugen has uncovered with the Facebook Papers. I think they are keeping their cards close to their chest, and there is for sure more to uncover. Now, these are only, they said, tens of thousands? Tens of thousands of documents. I'm sure there's more. Not only documents, I'm sure that there's plenty of emails they could go through. and other memos and notes and stuff that they've passed along with each other, which could shed some more light on this information. They would need a court order to get access to those. And especially since there's a lot of things that have come to light, I think that they could get a court order to actually go in there and check out what they're doing. Excuse me. I'm gassy today. I apologize. The bottom line, we need to classify these tech companies. We need to make it more black and white, as if they are liable for the content that's posted on their platform or not. If it's dictated by the freedom of speech rights, then other than content that is depicting or calling for violence and action, when we should leave it alone. Either way, we should do a better job policing their content. But what's really interesting about these social media giants is they're very good at policing the things that they want to police, and especially people who have a large audience and a large voice, a large following. If they don't align, allegedly, it seems that their ideologies don't match with some of the people that are using their platform. And if they don't like them, they'll be removed. I think the perfect example here, I guess one of the biggest examples, was Donald Trump, stating that I'm sure that they're using the whole Capitol building incident to ensure that he doesn't get back on. And I'm very curious if they ever will let him back on. My guess is not. However, I'm very curious what's going to happen if he ends up winning the next election, if he's still going to run for it or not. I'm actually really curious. And if that's the case, if they would, be willing to put him back on, because let's be honest, some of his tweets were rather hilarious. Now, don't get me wrong, he was very polarizing. I think there's a lot of people on the right and on the left that are very polarizing, but he was very outspoken, and some of the interviews, or not, was it interviews? No, I think it was like a Q&A or something like that, where he had CNN ask a question and he answered it, and they kept going. And he was just like, no, I'm not going to answer any more questions from you. You're fake news. And I was like, whoa, that's quite interesting that he calls them out like directly. But I think another great example was the InfoWars guy. Oh, goodness gracious. I had his name on the tip of my mouth, tip of my tongue in the teeth. I don't know. Alex Jones. Probably one. I mean, don't get me wrong. Not only was he very polarizing, but a lot of his conspiracy theories were kind of wackadoodle and out of this world. However, what was really interesting is that Alex Jones was actually more right than he was wrong. I don't know what the percentage is, but the more that I've heard about him and I've heard about his story, and I know that he had some bad takes when it came to Sandy Hook. I also think that there was a lot of things that he said that were taken out of context as well, that didn't really help or really, it really didn't help his case, but it definitely hindered kind of him coming back from that cancellation. And of course, he's been removed on pretty much all social media, and I think he just really pretty much has his website now. I think he's still good. I think InfoWars is still up. Yeah, InfoWars is still up. So, I mean, he's not completely, removed from sharing his opinions and his thoughts and all the interesting documents and paperwork that he's found in the past. But at any rate, we talked a little bit about this in our cancel culture podcast I did a couple of episodes back. But it's really interesting especially when you can document and see that that there's people being canceled on both sides. There are also moderates and centrists that are being canceled and removed off of different social media platforms, or being demonetized. I think mostly now they're doing more demonetization, so that they're not completely being attacked by, either parties, that they get completely removed from the platforms. But it really comes to the thing where we need to kind of discuss, like, okay, so are these companies liable for the things that are on their platform? Now, from the current laws, as far as I understand, is that they're currently not liable for the things that are on their platforms. Like, there's laws in place and litigations in place to continue to keep them from being liable for bad things being said and being shared around their platforms, which makes it really interesting, especially since, kind of thinking back when the first couple of years of Facebook, was really big, and it was, released outside of the universities. I don't know if you guys have seen the Facebook kind of dramatized, what was it called? The Social Network, I think. Yeah, 2010 Social Network. Jesse Ellsberg, Andrew Garfield, JT. I forgot JT was in there. It was actually a very interesting film, and I know it was a dramatized version of the actual events that occurred, but it definitely got you an idea of the explosive growth, how quickly it spread, and how it became not only a social network within universities, but then they expanded it to anybody else that wasn't a part of a university. And it seriously overtook MySpace. MySpace was like, I wouldn't say it was the first social media platform, but it definitely was one of the most popular just before Facebook. Excuse me. And anybody who knew anybody was on it. There's a lot of comics, actually, that were able to utilize a lot of these platforms to perpetuate their comedy and get the word out of where they're going, and special releases, and kind of building their own communities and stuff like that. And I know Dane Cook was one of the pioneers of that genre, and that the group of comedians that was able to actually utilize it to the point where he was doing stadiums much, much faster and doing specials much quicker than the usual time frames that a lot of the comics were experiencing. All that information is really interesting. I don't know where you would be able to find that specifically, but I know I read it somewhere, and I'm sure if you did some Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever, I'm sure you would find more information on it. But yeah, so it's kind of like going back to Facebook, and not only are they trying out these new algorithms to find content, to flag it, to cover it up, like if it's something like very violent or misleading or whatever, there's now like little messages next to it now. I'm dropping things. There are now links next to posts if it feels that it's misinformation, and it'll give you a link to go to. That's obviously going to be one of their links, according, I'm sure, to their ideologies. And what's really interesting about these new algorithms and these new things that they're trying to do, they feel, I understand where they're coming from. I know that it's coming from a place of, we want to protect people. And I think in the most, like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that that's definitely some of the underlying motivations. But when it comes to some very strategic and very surgical removals of people, it starts to become like this thing where you're just like, okay, so if your guys aren't liable for this information, for these posts and stuff like that, then why are we trying so hard to lock it down and police it? I mean, I think that's a reasonable question. Because I really do believe that they should take some things in consideration. But at the same time, like, I think it's okay for people to talk about aliens visiting people in their bedrooms and abducting them. I think it's okay for people to talk about flat Earth. I think it's okay for people to talk about religious or political beliefs or thoughts. I think it's okay for people to talk about their kids and share pictures and be like, hey, look at my kids. Aren't they amazing? And it's really important to kind of decide, okay, well, where's the line? Where's the line that we say, okay, we can't cross this? And for me personally, I talked about this on the other podcast, but my personal line is I don't think that we should share things that are like declaring violence directly onto people. I don't think that's okay. And obviously, sexual violence is also rolled into that. I obviously don't want to see like decapitated heads or other very explicit, very grotesque images, whether they're even like real or not. Like I've becoming to a point in my life where things that I know are I'm kind of going back to movies here, but so I watched both Deadpool movies. The first one was okay. The second one was kind of weird, but there's an opening sequence in there where somebody gets catapulted and they kind of splat against, I think it was like a highway sign or something like that. And I exclaimed, I was just like, whoa, did you see that? I like turned to my wife or whoever I was watching with. I was like, whoa, did you see that? And there was some Karen in there. I was just like, shut up. We all saw it. And it's just like, oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess I can't, be, an exclamation of, oh, wow. This is like a very violent film. Now, so going back to Facebook, obviously you couldn't take a clip or a GIF of that and probably share that around on Facebook. But here's the other thing, is that if that is the line where you can't show grotesque or violent images, can people share like historical stuff, about Nazis in the concentration camps, or about like any number of things, like public beatings or beheadings and stuff like that from other countries. Like, I don't know. That's the thing. It's like, it's really hard to say no to some things and say yes to other things. So it's kind of, it's really hard for me, but these are the kind of things that I think about when I read about these things, when I look at these different articles. But what's really great though is I'm becoming more and more informed, and I think I'm having some more informed decisions and more informed opinions about things. But for me personally, I don't think we should, share violent or sexually violent things online. I think that's definitely something that is a line that we shouldn't cross. And obviously if it's something that needs to be age gated, that it should, because we all know that there's young children on Facebook. Like we all know that there's a lot of parents that allow their kids, and there's kids who know that their parents don't allow them and they make accounts anyways. So I don't know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on where you think the line should be, or if there shouldn't be a line. And, on these social media platforms, you can talk about anything. Because I'll be honest, I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. And there's also, because, you know, these algorithms are based on computer code created by people, you know, are human beings and are imperfect and make mistakes. They also cover up content that doesn't need to be covered up, which is very interesting. So, I mean, even if it's very innocuous and, you know, very tame. So it's really interesting, especially when people are trying to use sources that hopefully the majority of people like can agree on, or using governmental sites and stuff like that, where they're taking that information from and then sharing that information, but it's being like taken down, or a clickable wall, which I think is really interesting. But that's the thing. Who dictates what misinformation is? You know, is it these algorithms that are creating that? Are these manually being reviewed? Are they being flagged and manually reviewed? And then, you know, links are attached to that saying, oh, this is misinformation. You know, and again, who dictates that the misinformation that you're going to get the correct information is the correct information? You know, who's policing the police kind of idea. So how do we keep these companies accountable for their actions, especially when it's harming people? Like if someone looks up like food disorders, you know, the algorithm will say, oh, you're interested in food disorders. Here's some more information on food disorders. And not all information about food disorders is good for somebody to consume. Because if they continue looking at negative information about food disorders, what's going to happen to that person is they're going to continue to follow down this rabbit hole, and continue to be fed this negative information to the point where they're just like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to continue to have this disorder. And I think subconsciously people will continue to have that disorder if it's continually brought to them and said, hey, you need to consume this, and they keep consuming it, and now they believe it. Now it's just like a part of their psyche almost. Now I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, you know, I'm not a professor, but I think there's something to say about this information, because I think it can get to the point where it can get really bad. Although on the other hand, the algorithms can be really good. Some of the things that I like watching on YouTube is, this guy named Rudy from Alpha Investments. He opens up packs of, you know, collectible card game cards. And he also talks about marketplace within the tradable, collectible, playable card game worlds. And of course, because I watch those, you know, a couple of times a week, I'll get more other videos suggested to me from other content creators that do similar things, which can be helpful. Although I'm not really looking for another channel. Like I have my two, card people. I have Alpha Investments and I also have PokerRev. Shout out to PokerRev and Rudy. And those are the ones I like watching. Now they'll continue to send stuff to me, and that's fine. But I'll always stick with the people that I enjoy. And that's something that people should definitely remember, is that you don't have to get everybody. You can just find the ones that you like and stick with those. You don't need to continue to look for more. But that's the same thing with the Facebook video section that you can watch, and they're kind of like it's kind of like their version of YouTube, and they also have like shorts and stuff like that, and a lot of times TikTok and Instagram videos make it on there. But the other day I was watching different like 10-15 minute clips from auditing police officers by citizens, which I find interesting. But they'll continue to send them my way. Like I'll just keep scrolling up and I'll just keep seeing more, because how the algorithm works is that the longer you keep your attention on a video, the more videos that it'll share that are very similar. So let that sink in. It's really interesting. So although I do see the benefits of these algorithms and, some of these changes in their policies and stuff like that, I also see the other side, which is also can be harmful and hurtful, especially when it comes to younger kids, because they no longer have to go and confront like their bullies anymore. They can just, do their shit posting online, and they can even do it anonymously now. I'm sure a lot of times like kids are probably doing it over like Snapchat and stuff like that, which I don't know if you parents know about this feature on Snapchat, but the people that you accept as friends can also see where your location is. And that's a bit nerve-wracking. When we had a foster kid in our home for a while, that was the app that we no longer allowed him to use. And I'm sure, kids find their ways around things. They'll do it on their laptops at school, or they'll jump on their buddies' phones, or they'll ask a buddy to get a phone for them so they can look up to the Wi-Fi. Which parents, I don't know if you know this, but there's a WPS button on the back of most routers that they can push that, and they can connect wirelessly without even having the password. Which is convenient for a lot of things, but it's an unfortunate workaround. And kids use it. So there's got to be some way that these platforms like Facebook can configure. Like, I know they're working on it. I don't know how well they're working on it. And I'm sure like a lot of these documents and stuff, and I'm sure when the judges start going after them to kind of figure if they are doing harm to people and if they know about it, and if they're continuing to be like, it's business as usual, which is a kind of unfortunate side effect when you have a company that's gone public, is that it's make a profit this year at any cost. Because if they lose money, their shareholders are not going to like it. They're going to sell their shares. Their shares are going to go down. The market's not going to look good for them. So it's unfortunate, but a lot of these big companies are run to get profit. And I'm not saying profit is bad, but when you're sacrificing people's safety for profit, that should be illegal, in my opinion. When they start doing stuff like that and doing shenanigans, there should be something done about it. So I'm really glad that this whistleblower has come forward. I hope that they really dive into these very closely. I really do hope that they investigate all these big, large social media companies and find out what's really going on under the hood. Like, really give it a good, clean inspection, because I think there's going to be a lot of nefarious things that are going to come out. I'm just guessing at this point, but I would think there's some nefarious things going on. So I really do believe that these companies need to stop being protected by laws like the one that's in place right now, which basically absolves them from anything that's posted on their platform. But I really do believe that these companies need to be labeled as, whether they're a publisher or whether this is like what's the other word? It's a publisher, or I can't remember the other word right now. But either way, we really do need to kind of figure out what's okay and what's not okay to happen to these companies. They really do need to be punished if they are pushing profits over safety for people. They need to stop making money off of our metadata. And if they are going to continue to make profits off of our metadata, I really do believe that they should give a cut to the people that they're making profits off of. And they should get permission. Like, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to want to opt out from their metadata being collected. I really don't like the idea of my metadata being collected, because it allows them to make better algorithms to have more focused advertisements towards me. And what's really interesting is that I don't buy a lot of things, but I know there's a lot of people out there that do. And I know that advertising works. But I really don't believe that they should be tracking those kinds of things. Like, they should not be tracking stuff that I'm doing on my phone. And I think it's a slippery slope when we start trading our safety, or our rights for our safety, no matter how innocuous it is. Because once you give the government permission, they're not going to take it back. Like, the government, like, let's take the pandemic, for instance, with the whole COVID virus. Now that the government knows that they can do a mandate and people are going to comply and follow, what's going to stop them from doing it again? Something to think about. They definitely need to listen to parents, especially with the experiences that they're having with their kids. I think we need to do a better job at protecting kids, because my wife works for a nonprofit company, organization, same diff. She works for a nonprofit organization that deals with people that are surviving physical and sexual abuse, both adults and children, and even families. And what's sad is these apps, as much as they are a tool and as much as they help keep people connected, as much as they allow families to know what's going on in your life, births of children, the frequency and the instantaneous ability to share this information, it's a wonderful tool, and it can be used for good. However, with all these wonderful features and stuff, it can also be used for bad. And it's it's unfortunate. There's, many stories out there and instances where people, especially young children, are trafficked through these apps. I can't remember when this happened. I think this was back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, but there was like a specific game, and maybe I'm thinking this from a TV series. Maybe this is from Criminal Minds. Please let me know if I'm incorrect on this, because I just don't have, the ability to just Google everything that comes out of my mouth. But I'm pretty sure there was like different chat rooms in like different video games that people were using to lure kids away from their homes. Where nowadays it's all done through like social media, texting, and it's really scary. So we need to figure out how we can protect, obviously, not only adults, but definitely kids. We need to protect the kids, because the kids are our future. And so if they're traumatized and they're scared and, they don't have the know-how and the skills they need to survive in this world, both, mentally, physically, and monetarily, then what is this all for? Children are our future. Like I postulated this question to myself. Should social media apps like Facebook even exist? Does it really serve a purpose for humanity? Does it really serve a purpose to families? Now, even though I talked about the good things and we talked about the bad things, does the good weigh out the cost of the bad? And I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. Mostly I use social media stuff right now to, share the information on the podcast and to, hopefully encourage people to come and check us out. And sometimes I do get on it and I see what other people are doing, like family and friends. But I find that a lot of times it's like a crutch. Like I think a lot of times it's kind of one of those things, much like, spending hours on video games, spending hours on Facebook, just scrolling through the wall, and seeing what people are posting and they're sharing on their stories. It's just another something to keep your mind tended until you go to bed, so you can get up and go back to work, so you can come home, so you can, watch TV and play video games and watch Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat until you go to bed again. Now, this is obviously my tinfoil hat talking here, but these apps are designed to keep our attention, and they're getting better and better at it. Many of you, I'm sure haven't, or maybe you have watched The Social Dilemma. I would definitely recommend watching that and think about, how you're using your time. And I think I'm starting to find a balance. I don't know if I'm perfect at it yet. I don't think I'm perfect at it yet. If there is such a thing as perfection, which the more and more I live in this life, it's just like, I don't think this life is, perfection is achievable. I think we can do pretty dang close to perfection on some things. But I think overall, I don't know. It's like, do we even need it? Do we even need it? Moving on to our second so if you haven't already, hopefully you've taken a look at the articles that we've left in the links in the description below. We would love to hear your thoughts on social media and also the impact that it's having on children and families and adolescents. And just leave a comment below. Really would love to hear from you. So because of their limited capacity for self-regulation and susceptibility to peer pressure, children and adolescents are at some risk as they navigate and experiment with social media. Recent research indicates that there are frequent online expressions of offline behaviors such as bullying, clique forming, sexual experimentation that have introduced problems such as cyberbullying, privacy issues, sexting. Other problems that merit awareness include internet addiction and concurrent sleep deprivation. That is actually something that's really interesting. I do find if I'm watching a lot of videos and I'm like cruising on like Facebook, like videos, or watching TikTok or whatever, I find that it's a lot more difficult to go to sleep. I think a lot of it is the information being inputted, but also I think the watching the screen like so close to your face, I think there's something there that doesn't help you get to the point where you're actually tired and want to actually go to bed and sleep and get good restful sleep. Much like the intake of good food will keep you energized and will help regulate your sleep. Like also I've heard and understand that doctors have said that quitting or drastically reducing your caffeine consumption will actually help regulate your sleep, which is really interesting. That's another thing I'd encourage people to check out. Because the information I saw, it's pretty convincing. Many parents are aware that 13 years is the minimum age for most social media sites, but do not understand why. There are two major reasons. First, 13 years is the age set by Congress in the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, so COPPA, which prohibits websites from collecting information on children younger than 13 years without parental permission. Second, the official term for service for many popular sites now mirror COPPA regulations and state that 13 years is the minimum age to sign up and have a profile. This is the minimum age to sign on sites such as Facebook and MySpace. They actually have MySpace now. That's awesome. There are many sites for pre-adolescents and younger children that do not have such an age restriction, such as Disney sites, Club Penguin, and others. I've never heard of Club Penguin, so I'm not really sure about that. Sexting can be defined as sending, receiving, or forwarding sexually explicit messages, photographs, or images via cell phone, computer, or other digital devices. Many of these images become distributed rapidly via cell phones or the internet. The phenomenon does not occur among the teen population. A recent survey revealed that 20% of teens have sent or posted nude or semi-nude photographs or videos of themselves. Some teens who have engaged in sexting have been threatened or charged with felony child pornography charges, although some states have stated characterizing such behaviors as juvenile law misdemeanors. Additional consequences include school suspension for perpetrators and emotional distress with accompanying mental health conditions for victims. In many circumstances, however, the sexting incident is not shared beyond a small peer group or a couple and is not found to be distressing at all. Oh, that's kind of weird. I kind of disagree with that, and this is kind of coming from my personal experiences with a young teenager who decided that it was a good idea to send and receive pictures of themselves. And it's very distressing, not only for the parents, but it's also distressing to the people that are engaging in it because kids are dumb. Sorry, I shouldn't say dumb. Kids are just young, like they haven't developed. Science shows, from what I understand of the science, is that your brain doesn't develop until you're like mid to late 20s. I know it's a bit earlier for young women, probably a little bit later for some young boys, but for the most part, around that mid to late 20 age is usually when your brain fully develops and you're actually no longer trying to figure stuff out as much, if that makes sense. So here's my problem is 13 years I think is too young to be on these social media apps. Number one, it's very simple and easy for perpetrators, pedophiles, other people that just want to influence and control people. It's very easy for this to be done on the internet, and it happens at the speed of light. Because fiber. Fiber meaning not cable, is like cable internet versus fiber. But anyways, I digress. I think 13's too young because you can send and receive photos. And I think for the development for children, they already are confused enough about things. I don't think that they need social media and social contact online and through applications and cell phones and stuff like that. I just don't feel like it's important for them. Even though it's starting to get to the point where, if you want your kid to go to school, they have to have a cell phone because they have to log in and create all these applications and have an email and stuff like that to do homework. And it's just like, I think we're becoming too technologically advanced for children. And I think it's hurting more than helping. This is just from my observations, being around a teenager for about a year, going through all this stuff. Kids are confused enough, like trying to figure out relationships, between their peers. They're trying to figure out relationships with the opposite sex, trying to understand what sex is, trying to understand where they are kind of like in the hierarchy within social groups. Like it's hard enough, with people in cliques and clubs and stuff like that. It's like, why are we adding more things to children to be more confused about? I know, let's give them the internet. I kind of feel like between the internet and social media apps and like Facebook and all this stuff, this is just coming out of the book of Jacob here. I really feel like there should be a higher age restriction for these things. I really feel like children shouldn't be able to access these things unless you're willing to enable them to like take pictures of themselves and send nudes and to watch pornography, or to get confused about the LBGT of GBTs of the world. I mean, again, let's confuse children even more by giving them these things. I know, let's continue to add political ideologies to children. I look at Greta Thunberg, and I wonder, like, is she led, like did she even have a chance to be a child? To go and like play and roll around in the dirt, to swim in a lake, to, I don't know, go water skiing or camping, or is she just always 24/7 like trying to push climate change? And what happens to the development of children that become adults before they're even an adult? Like what kind of psychological effects does that have on children? I think about these things and I wonder if all this kind of stuff is really relevant or necessary for children. And then what's the age? Like what's the age? If people can't consume pornography until they're 18, I feel like then they shouldn't have a cell phone with a camera until they're 18. They should be able to have a flip phone in case of an emergency, obviously. But as far as like texting and having applications and Snapchat and Facebook, and TikTok, like TikTok it's questionable at best. Especially some of these scantily dressed young girls. I'm just kind of curious what they're doing these TikToks for and why. But I digress. What's really interesting about the second one is that it shares some statistics. And the statistic of there's over 70% of teens now have cell phones. And adults who have grown up with them have found a balance, but kids don't yet have the ability to stop compulsory activities. Of course they don't. They're children. They're kids. They have no idea what's going on. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. They're just not advanced yet. Their brain hasn't developed. They haven't developed a psyche that can like actually make rational, good decisions. Why do we think that vaping has become such a big thing with young teens, because they can't stop. Like putting on not only the addiction component of nicotine, but with the compulsory way of life that kids are, they get obsessed about things. Boys get obsessed about girls, and girls get obsessed about boys, and so on and so forth. Like I have a hard time wanting to say that it's okay for these things to be consumed and utilized by children, because children are being perpetrated on by all angles. Kids nowadays, before they're even like 12, are already on like Ritalin or Adderall, and I understand, and I agree, there's probably some kids that do need these things, or like, consuming like melatonin to help them sleep and stuff like that. But these things also stunt their growth, especially when it comes to their cognitive abilities. So what are we going to do? Are we going to help or are we going to hurt? Are we going to help these kids develop naturally to get to the point where they need to be, so that when they're finally fully developed and hopefully good human beings, they can go out in the world and like take it on and grab the bull by the horns and actually like do something with their lives? Or they're going to be stuck, being bullied, or are they going to end up being traumatized or depressed or being suicidal all their lives because they've gone through these very adult things too early? It's very concerning to me. And some of the disturbing things was that they found, a quote from this one is that, said in many circumstances, sexting incidents that are not shared beyond a small peer group or a couple of people, they didn't find it distressing at all. Seriously? Like, do we not think about these poor young girls that think it's okay, or that if they think a boy likes them, that they should give them a picture of themselves naked? And now that boy knows, like, how compulsive is this young boy going to be trying to now have sex with this young girl? I don't think that should be okay. Like, again, these kids are confused enough. I really feel that we need to protect children. We need to protect kids. And we need to keep them safe. We need to keep them on the path of continually educating themselves, questioning things, researching things. Like, they shouldn't be worried about all this stuff. Oh, what did Peggy Sue say about Tommy the other day? Or, oh, I'm going to start a bullying campaign and I'm going to make a bunch of memes and stuff with videos and clips and pictures of this person because they sent like a very funky picture at me. Like, I don't know. It's bugging me. I think the age should be increased. If I can't meet people in the middle, at the top of mine, which is honestly between 18 and 21, then at least meet me halfway. Let's move the minimum age to sign up to these sites to be 16, and let's put a gate in there where you have to include a social security number which is attached to your birth date so that they can actually know that it's you. And it would also make sense because now you can't make a duplicate account with that social security number because it's attached. So like, let's say your mom, has a Facebook account, which is attached to, this is just an idea. Obviously it's not going to be perfect. There's ways around these things. Like, I've been in technology for so long now, like it's ridiculous. It's like, there's no real gateway, pornography is just a check mark away and, oh yes, I'm 18 and you're in. Like, there's no, anyways, I digress. But that would at least help to keep from kids like trying to make an online account with their parents' information. It'd make it at least a little bit harder for kids to get them. Like, anybody can create an email account to receive and do all these things. Like, it's so easy. So what are we going to do? I don't know the answers to everything. I do believe there should be better gates applied I really do believe that kids need to be protected. I think they need to stop growing up so fast. They need to just be kids and children until they become of age and they can move on with their lives, move out of their parents' house, you know. And okay, so I'm going to share a story. No, I'm not going to share this particular story. Never mind. I was going to share it, but if these children are sharing pictures of themselves and they're underage, yeah, I get it. Like, maybe something should be a little bit lighter on their punishment, but they should definitely be sat down and educated on the ramifications, like of what if these got out to somebody, or if somebody found them and then started stalking them. Now, obviously, you know, crime is relatively low across the world. Not everybody's out, you know, trying to get, you know, people or to stalk people and stuff like that. My mind always goes to the worst case scenario, and it's kind of served a purpose in my life. But again, I just let's protect the children. Let's keep them safe. Let's put real roadblocks in the way from them to accessing these kinds of things and doing these kinds of things. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. I mean, we could go on and on with this, but I know we're already at the top of almost an hour. Thank you for those that watch this live. Like we've said in the past, I'm starting to do these now twice a week, where we have a live show, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays I do them by myself. Thursdays I try to get with my wife or my best buddy, if not both of them, and we have a discussion and a conversation. And sometimes it's fun. It's probably not as serious as I do mine, but I'm really enjoying these things, and I just want to say thank you for all the support. We couldn't do this, you know, without you guys. The best way to support us is obviously to like the video, to share it. If you haven't subscribed and followed already, obviously hit that subscription or follow button, and make sure to hit the notification bell so that way you don't miss a stream. And from our family to yours, good night.